Okay, this is another really good question from Beth. She asks, is it always biblical to say, quote unquote, if the Lord wills? And that's from James chapter 4. Um, Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we shall go and do this and that. And he says, what you ought to say is, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this and that. Notice it even says live. You don't even know if you're going to live tomorrow. There's no promise of that. And then it says, I think we use it as an excuse or manifestation of doubt. Then it says, or not operating in faith. Also, she mentions speaking things into existence. I think I know what she's saying there. So this is a really good question. Yes, it's biblical to say if it's the Lord's will, but I know what she's saying because people have this que sera, sera attitude. God works in mysterious ways. This idea that, wow, if it doesn't happen, then hey, it's God's will, and it's just a cop out. It's one big excuse, one big cop out, like she's suggesting. Wow, this is a good question. Yeah, but I think personally, and this I should develop this at a later time, maybe with a longer, step by step, really a fuller thing. But let me just do a snippet here. She's got a really good point because what I think we should know God's will. It says that, by the way, in Ephesians. It says understanding what the will of the Lord is, and His Word, by the way, the Bible, is absolutely the will of God, all the way through. So the Bible does say if we ask anything according to His will, then He hears us. And so, according to His will, suggests, by the way, that you should know His will. Then you'll know that He's hearing you. If you're saying things that are not even His will, He's listening, but He's not really hearing you. He's not going to, do it. So I think biblically we should know, as a rule, the will of God. When you don't know the will of God, then you say, well, if this is your will, we don't know what it is, and please do it. And you're really praying for His will to be done, not just some cop out like excuse not to know it. And I think we should know His will. Therefore, faith begins knowing His will. Faith begins where the will of God is known. So if we know His will on something, and you say, well, what about healing and this? Well, go pray through until you find out. God, I pray for this person. Please show me what your will was on this. I think we should pray that way. I think most Christians, in my opinion, aren't. Me too, included. I think we don't pray enough. We don't seek God. We don't wait before God to find out His will and what He wants to do in each situation and with each person's life. I think it's laziness. And I think we are making an excuse when we say, well, if it's God's will. It's just our way of getting by if our prayers aren't answered, when God really wants us to answer prayers. I think Beth has a really, really good point here. So you say, what do you do, Gordon? Go find out God's will. First of all, just read the Bible like crazy. You'll find out His values, what He wants, and all. And then, like, He's not willing that any should perish. Well, then let's go pray for. We can't pray for everybody coming into the whole world because it's God's will, and it's not going to happen. But we can pray for the ones that God lays on our heart and the people close to us that we know, and that's our world of influence. And we could pray God into it and really get His will to happen in their lives and change lives because of that. We can seriously change our world around us, and then we can change globally things that God puts on our hearts. He can put it on one heart, one thing, a people group or a nation or whatever on our heart, another thing on another Christian's heart and all, which it's not really seeking the Lord and really waiting before God to know His will. So I like her things. Now about speaking things into existence, there is a school of people, Christians, a movement of Christians who's, I think, take some of the scriptures that Jesus said, like if you command this, He says, speak to this mountain, be removed and be cast in the sea and all. And then they take that wonderful passage in Romans 4 about Abraham. It says, saying those things that aren't as though they were, speaking those things that aren't as they were. He was calling himself Abraham. He wasn't even a father yet. Father of nations. He wasn't there. Speaking those things as if they already happened. But that was based on what God spoke to Abraham. So we can't speak things into existence. God is the one who does that. He takes nothing and he speaks the universe into existence. Now, if God speaks through us, by his Holy Spirit, then we can do what Jesus did, curse the fig tree and it withered. Or stretch forth your hand. And the guy stretched forth his hand. And he even took lame people and grew legs out and all that. So, yeah, I think we can do it based on what the Spirit of God does it. We can't do it unless God's moving us to do it. So I hope that answered the question. Good questions. God bless you.